If I were going to refurbish the focus adjusting assembly on this Haag-Streit binocular head, first thing I would want to do is take notice of when they're screwed all the way in, to find out where they end, where the marks end on both sides. They might be different, but they're usually pretty close to the same. And on this one, it's going to be just to the left of the 8. Sometimes they're to the right of the 8. Sometimes they're in the middle. But we want to try to get it, when we put everything back together, we want to try to get it right back to where it was, because that's where the factory has set it up as being focused at 0. And that's what we want to return it to. So once you have an idea of where it's going to end up when you put it back together, then you can take it apart. And we want to take the whole assembly out. There's a screw under here that has a pretty small head on it. You'll need a pretty small screwdriver to unscrew it. And you can take the whole side out. And if there was already the right tension on here, then you can probably put it back with the same grease that's on there. But if it was like too loose or too hard, you would want to go ahead and clean that and refurbish that. Okay. You'll want to clean your eyepiece, the lenses and everything. And what we want to do first is loosen this outer cap. It's got 2 little indentions on it. You can use your spanner wrench on. And if the slit lamp is really old, that might be very tight. So you might need to heat it up with a heat gun and get it really warm, and while it's still screwed in, loosen that cap screw. And if it's loose, then that's good. And then you can take these screws out. There's 3. You can go ahead and turn it out to get to those screws. Once I've removed the 3 screws, you can go ahead and unscrew this completely. And I'm going to want to clean all these threads. We can continue to take the rest of this apart. Little cap, another cover, and you'll notice it's got a little groove in it. That groove is going to go on a pin here. Now on the Marco, to get this off, you have to take that pin out, but for the Haag-Streit, you don't. So that's great, because that pin is hard to get in and out. But there's a little pin that this will fit on. So if you're cleaning all this and you happen to push your pin in a little bit too much and it's sticking out here, just push it back with your fingernail or something so that it's smooth in here and it's flush, because that's where your eyepiece is going to go. And if your eyepiece was too loose going in, you can squeeze these a little bit. They put a little tension on your eyepiece, but don't do it too much. Just has to be a little bit of grab right as it gets near the end to push it in. So clean everything, all these surfaces, the threads in here, clean all that, and I use this lighter fluid, but you can use whatever you have to clean it. So I'm going to go ahead and clean all those, and then we'll talk about what kind of grease to put on. The greases we're going to use are this Haag-Streit number 9. It's a grease that has a thicker viscosity, and then on the barrel we're going to use a number 4, and this is very thick viscosity. But what we want to do is put number 9 grease on these threads, and then a light coating on this brass insert. So all we want to do is get a light film on the threads, on all the threads. And the way I do it is I put some grease on there, number 9 grease, and then start rubbing the grease all the way around with my finger to make sure that all the threads have grease in them. And they have equal amount. You don't want to put too much grease on here, because once you screw it in, if you have too much, you're going to have a lot on the outside, and you'll have to clean that up. So it doesn't take a lot, but just try to spread that grease all the way around on all the threads so it's equal. That's because when you're putting it back together and you're screwing it, it will have the same tension as you're screwing in. If you have grease on some threads and not on the others, then when you're adjusting the focus, your tension won't be the same. It'll be hard, it'll be tight, and then it'll be easy because there was no grease on those threads. So then you want to do the same thing for the inside threads here. Put some grease in there and spread it around all the threads. And not an excess, just enough. If you have too much, then wipe your finger off and keep doing it until it's just a light coating. And then if you have a little bit left on your finger, you can rub the outside of this cylinder. And this too takes just a very light film on it. Because that's going to be sliding in and out of here. Okay, you've got those things greased up. And then we're going to put, before we start putting it back together, just a little bit of dab of grease on these. There's some edges up here. Just a little dab, because, well, we're going to put it back together. We're going to put see with that little dab of grease on here, or you could put a little dab of grease right on the front edge. Because that's what's going to be turning together. And we're going to take our next piece, and then just in the corner, right on the corner, we'll put a little dab of grease, just for slightness. And then where our little notch is, we're going to find where the pin is, where you can just put it on and turn it until it finds the pin and locks in. Right now it's in the pin, it's not turning anymore. And then it's time to put our cap on. Now this we don't have to put any lubricant on, no grease, because it's just going to be flat up against here. And we're going to tighten it with our spanner wrench. Just hold it, this outer part, while you're turning it. And get it pretty firm. So it should be turning freely with a little bit of tension because of that number 9 grease. And now this is the part that it takes a while to get it right, maybe, or you might get it right the first time. Okay, we remember where we were wanting to end up with our arrows, right past the 8. Right past the 8. So, but where we're going to start it at is we're going to go to 5. This would be 5 and let's say 3/4. So 5 3/4 on the plus side of 0. I'm going to move. I'm going to hold it there. And our little track where the key, it's going to be following the key, we're going to put this back in right where the key is. We're going to aim it to go right toward that key with our number set at around 5 3/4. And we're going to insert it, try to insert it straight where that key is. Okay, I've inserted it. Now we're going to hold it. We're going to hold it still so that it doesn't turn. It doesn't turn away from our keyway. That stays the same. I'm going to hold the outside and then turn the wheel. Turn the threads. And what's happening is now it's moving in and it's going along that keyway, so it's following the key, and we're screwing it in, holding the outside while I'm screwing the knurled nut. I'm screwing it in, and just before I get to the end, I'm going to look and see where my holes are lining up. And I'm going to try to line them up before it goes all the way in, so that so the holes will line up with this trim piece when I put my screws in. Because if I screw it all the way in, it's kind of hard to turn that thing. And if you screw it in too far and you can just back it out until you can get to there. Okay, so we're lined up pretty close. I'm going to screw it all the way in, and then we're going to check where we ended up at. And there we are. It ended up there. That's where we wanted to end our holes. You can get a little pointer and line those holes back up so you can put your screws in. Sorry about the noise. And then you're good. Now, if you had screwed it in and you can't find where your holes are, you can go ahead and screw it out a little bit until that little rim starts to appear again. And then you can turn it with your pointer so that the holes will line up. But don't come out too much, because you'll come out of your keyway, your key and your track alignment. So you don't want to come out too much. Just enough to turn this little rim to where your holes will line up. And if it didn't work, well, just unscrew it and try it again. So, okay, say it didn't work. So, okay, I've got to try it again. Let me try it again. And you might, if you were sure you had it there and it's ending up in the wrong area, you might want to adjust it. But I would try this a few times, because this seems to be the number that it ends up right where it's supposed to, oftentimes. So I'm going about, on the plus side, 3/4. Going to line up my key and the track. And making sure I'm still about at that level. The track's lined up about 5 3/4. then I'm going to hold this, hold it so it's going to go right along that keyway and start screwing it in. And if it doesn't start screwing in, kind of back it up just a little bit to get that thread going, that first thread. Okay. I'm going to line up my holes while I still can. Screw it in again, and let's see where I ended up. Hey, I ended up at the correct spot. So try it a few times and you'll get it. Okay, and you put your screws in and you can put everything back together. And then when it's time to put if you had to clean this and put new grease on, we would use a number 4. And this number 4 is very thick. Very thick. And it takes just a very little amount of grease to do what it's supposed to do. So I would take about that much. That doesn't seem like much, but it doesn't take much. And take that little bit of grease and just run on this front edge first, all the way around. And then when you have this front edge done, then start smearing the rest of whatever's on that front edge. Smear that on the rest of the barrel. And there may not be very much, but just spread out whatever you've put on that front edge so that there's just like a little spider web amount of grease on that barrel. This will help when you're putting it back in, that the tension will be pretty similar. But just spread out everything you've got. And again, don't put too much, because if you do, you're going to wind up with a lot here, and this is very hard to clean up because it's so thick. So it's better to err putting too little than putting too much, in my opinion. Okay, once you have that greased up, then you can go ahead and push it back in. Remember, this is going to be the bottom. That's where your safety screw. So put that towards the bottom, and you can look at your barrel to see that they're pretty well aligned up, equal spacing, and so then just slide it on in. It might be a little hard, the initial push, but then just keep twisting as you go in. And go in all the way, and then put your safety screw back in the bottom. And once you have that, your tensions here will be the same, and your tension here will be the same. Well, they'll be the same if you've done the same thing on both. Now you can see a little bit of extra grease here. I'm going to have to clean that up all the way around. So, and of course I've got to put my screws back in. So, hope that helps out. And this is for the Haag-Streit BM binocular head.